Hi, I'm Tony Soli, owner of New England Slip Solutions, and this is Fall Prevention Friday. This week we're going to focus on the identification of potential risk areas for slip and fall accidents. And when we talk about, there's a couple different ways we can identify, and one of them is notification. And notification is someone lets you know, or you figure it out yourself, that there's an area that's a potential risk. So we're going to talk about commercial business rather than residential today. And the reason why is I feel that in a residence, you're pretty familiar with your surroundings and why certain things happen within them. You know that your shower gets slippery when the water's on. However, when you walk into a commercial establishment, you're really at the mercy of what you personally know about the establishment, which may be nothing at times, and what the establishment provides you. So we're going to focus on the commercial side. So the commercial side, we got the owners and managers, and I kind of lump them together, possibly unfairly, but the owner will put the manager in charge and entrust the safety of their business to that manager. We then have the employees, we have the consumer, we might have some vendors, and we have your insurance agents and your lawyers sit over on the side. So, identification, the first step of identification is notification. Someone tells you that an area is slippery. So, the consumer says, hey, those stairs, that pool, that walkway, it's slippery. That's a step of notification. Another way that you can be notified is someone can show you. And what I mean by show you is, as a manager or a business owner, I remember I was a 17-year-old kid working in a restaurant, and at the end of the day, at midnight, we'd be doing dishes and cleaning the floors and stuff. And we'd be running around the restaurant and sliding on the floor on purpose. We'd make ourselves slide on the floor. Now, thinking back when I was 17, I couldn't tell you if that was water or grease or what was causing it, but the fact is that we were doing it. And if our manager is aware and knows that that's happening, that's a slip and fall risk. So, showing. So there's telling, there's showing. And then there's just, for those of us that live up here in New England, you walk outside in the winter and you go, wow, that looks slippery. So you just know, right? Now, notice I didn't say you call and have a test done. And the reason why I didn't say you call and have a test done is because while I can test any surface to tell you if it's slippery or not, ultimately, you have to have some thought process as to, my job is to make you think about the area to call us, not to just be like, I'm just going to pass the buck. And the reason why is because I can go in and treat every tub in a hotel, but if the stairway out in the back corner is of a material that's slippery, and I don't know about that area because no one tells me about that area, but you're in that hotel every day. So I want you guys to kind of think about your areas so that way we can address them appropriately. So what happens is more the reaction to the notification, and the reaction to the notification is the critical point. So if you've been notified that area A has a slip and fall potential from your consumer, generally when we sit in front of managers and owners, the general response is that they let somebody know on their staff to go look at it. Whether it's a maintenance person or employee, it doesn't, depending on the type of situation. I'm not going to say that's a terrible idea, but it's not great because that person may, in all likelihood, isn't qualified to assess the risk. And what I mean by qualified to assess the risk is, have they done any follow-up questions? So if area A is a ice bin in front on a tile floor, and your employee goes over there and goes, it looks good, rubs their foot on the floor, no, it looks good, and walks away. What they didn't do is they didn't take into account the factors that may have been at play when you were notified. So you were notified that the floor was possibly slippery, the follow-up should be, did something spill? Is there anything on the floor? Whereabouts? Did it just happen now? Stuff like that. So that way you can kind of get a general idea. So let's take that ice machine, for example. So there's a puddle there, right? And your employee goes over, because you've been notified, and you say, all right, I'm going to send someone to look at it. Your employee goes, oh, wow, there's a puddle here. And they go over. Again, where I'm not going to tell you you're wrong, but I don't agree with it, is always step one is, well, we're going to get the sign that says wet floor, and then we're going to mop it up. The sign and the mop should come at the same time. However, I'm going to tell you I don't like mopping. And I prefer that if there's a drain in the floor, you use a squeegee to push the water down the drain. Or if you don't have a drain in the floor, you invest in a shop vac, a wet dry vac, and you suck up the spill. That way, the contaminated floor, the contaminated surface is now dry. Dry surfaces are less slippery than wet surfaces. So what happens with a mop typically is you tend to make the contaminated area bigger, larger. So let's think about a grocery store with the long aisles, and you have a spill in the middle of it. It's like a good 3-foot round circle, and your employee goes out with a mop, and they mop up the spill, and they stick the wet floor sign at the north end of the aisle. Someone's approaching from the south end of the aisle, but you just made that 3-foot area 8, 10, 12 feet, and they slipped because they made the corner and they slipped at the south end of the aisle. That sign may have been obstructed by another consumer, a shopping cart, a display stand. So you've made the area more dangerous, even though you have the wet floor sign out. So we try to tell you that if mopping is your only option, you should really cordon off the area until the surface is completely dry. Step 2 now becomes, or step 2B, if you will, becomes ensuring that area stays dry. So if you know little Johnny pulled a bottle of water off the shelf and it spilled all over the floor, you know that the chance of that happening again, while little Johnny may come back by and do it again, the puddle's not going to keep reforming. However, if you're back at our ice machine and the supply line has a leak in it, well, that puddle can reform, or if the drain has a leak in it, that puddle can reform. So you need to investigate why the puddle happened. And what we recommend doing is, once the floor is dry, to survey that area. If you have no idea how that puddle formed, is to survey the area every 10 to 15 minutes for the first hour to 2 to see if the puddle reforms. If the puddle reforms, we then recommend cordoning off the area. Don't let anyone in there until you can investigate why the puddle is forming, stop the flow of water or flow of whatever the contaminant is, and clean it up, and then rectify the problem. What we don't want to see happen, and we see this a lot in convenience stores, is the drain hoses from where the overflow ice gets poured from consumers tends to leak a little bit, and it forms a puddle. And what happens is, while Shift A, employee A, knows that it's happening, when Shift B, employee B comes in, or employee C comes in, they may not have that information relayed to them, and there's a gap in communication. So taking it out of service, making the repair, and then putting it back in service is what we recommend, because it reduces your risk. So we hope you got a little bit of information today on Fall Prevention Friday. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, like and subscribe to our videos. If you have any questions about floor safety, slip and fall prevention, give us a call, 401-335-0150. You can email us at info@newlandslipsolutions.com. Visit our website, newlandslipsolutions.com. Have a great Fall Prevention Friday. Have an even better weekend, and we'll see you next week for our next installment. Take care.